Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to basically what's going to be the first in a little bit of a mini-series for us, because this is Geno Samuel's third channel, in which, from what I've discovered thus far, it seems to be a channel in which he basically does kind of like little diary entries based on monsters from Japanese folklore, otherwise known as Yokai, being the Japanese translation for monsters. And with that being said, we're going to begin with basically the very first video he put out, the slit-mouthed woman, otherwise known as a Kuchsake onna. Now, I believe, basically based on the thumbnail that Geno gave us, I think it's supposed to be, well, I wouldn't be surprised if it was largely, put into effect on in the manga series, how do I pronounce this? Keigurai, which is meant to be this manga about this girl who goes a little bit crazy for gambling. And from what I've gathered about the art style, and certainly based on the thumbnail, I think the two are kind of like one and the same. It wouldn't actually surprise me if the story ended with the main character. It's been a very long time since I've read Kakeguru, or whatever it was, that she turned out to be a Kuchsake onna. But with all that being said and done, we're going to check this out and see what Geno is like at documenting monsters. He's already done a miraculous job at documenting a real-life monster of sorts for the last 3 years, so let's see what else he could do. So, if you want to check out the original video for yourselves, I'll make sure to leave it in the description. So let's begin. In 3, 2, 1, and...
Yokai. Monsters. Ghosts. Phantasms. Mythical creatures. Spirits of Japan.
Well, I could definitely say this much. This is definitely Geno, and I think he's got this sort of voice that was made for stuff like this.
Walking back home from another monotonous day at work, a man goes through a seldom explored alleyway, an occasional shortcut he took to get to Mitaka train station. He finds himself suddenly frozen in place, face to face with a woman wearing a mask and holding what appears to be a kitchen knife in one hand. He can only stand agape in fear as she asks him, "Am I pretty?" He knows what she is. He has heard the story before. He knows that if he answers no, she will take her knife and kill him on the spot. If he tells her she is pretty, she will take off her mask to reveal that her mouth had been sliced from both corners and the gashes almost reached her ears. She will then ask, "Am I still pretty, even now?" If he says no, she will cut him in half. If he says yes, then she will use her knife to cut his mouth wide open and give him a smile matching her own. What can he do? Kuchsake onna, the slit-mouthed woman, is considered not only a yokai, the widely varied collective of creatures and spirits of Japanese myth and folklore, but also one of the earliest examples of a Japanese urban legend. The backstory that is circulated most frequently is that she is a ghost of an adulterous woman who was brutally killed by her jealous husband, who asked her, "Who will call you beautiful now?" after cutting her mouth open from ear to ear. She then returned to the world of the living, forever searching for people who would call her beautiful again. Because of this, the slit-mouthed woman also falls into the more specific yokai category of onryo, meaning vengeful spirits, as those who are violently and or unjustly killed are bound to...
Quick thing also I want to point out very quickly is that there is also a manga series, I think it's like a 5 or 6 issue series called Tokyo Babylon, which is about this sorcerer, some kind of like exorcist. I think he was an exorcist, in which he cures vengeful spirits and helps them find them on their way. It's not the same as Bleach. Bleach is a lot more action oriented, and that's another series I haven't actually read for years. But I have heard about that sort of thing before, and I don't particularly know whether or not that featured a Kuchsake onna, but it features other vengeful kinds of spirits.
Return to exact vengeance upon the living. Those sightings of a woman with a bloody mouth, smiling ear to ear, and scaring people to death have been written of in stories dating back to the Edo period some 200 or 300 years ago. Ikura Yoshiyuki, an oral tradition researcher and university professor, theorized that the story in its current, most well-known configuration first originated in December 1978 in the town of Yaotsu in Gifu Prefecture, when a rumor of a woman with a slit mouth standing in a corner of another family's garden began circulating amongst the townspeople. For the longest time, it was believed to have been first mentioned in print in the Gifu Hinichi newspaper, published on January 26, 1979. But recently, a Nagoya-based newspaper article that was published 4 days earlier was discovered, describing Kuchsake Onna and offering an illustration of her. Her story continued to spread throughout the country, making further appearances in publications over the next few months, finally reaching a Tokyo-based news magazine in April. The woman with a bloody smile, hidden behind a surgical mask, one that many used to protect others from catching their cold, became known for stopping children on their way back home to ask them if they considered her pretty. This was a time when school children would go to afternoon cram schools, or juku, to prepare for upcoming tests. These cram schools often brought kids from neighboring areas together, and, as Professor Ikura stated, they would exchange with each other stories and rumors they heard, and would then bring the stories back to their own respective neighborhoods. Since juku started in the evenings, it would already be dark outside when kids went home, which further instilled in them a fear of the slit-mouthed woman, as they undoubtedly had to travel either on their own or in small groups, and would have to make their way through dark, empty roads, or conversely crowds of strangers, populated with adults.
Just out of reference, in the UK, we never really had stuff like gram schools. We had like after school clubs and that, and like revision periods for like older year groups. I could thoroughly say that because even though, well, I know fine well times have certainly changed, or even when I was in school, but there would have been absolutely no way in hell anybody would have considered it safe, whether or not you were 11 years old and you were just recently joined secondary school, or whether or not you were this big bolshy brute of a bastard who was 18 and can thoroughly take care of himself. Nobody still thinks it quite natural to walk alone. Even in summer, it's still I find that sort of thing fascinating, because in many ways, if you travel on your own, you almost draw more attention to you. More attention is drawn to you than if you were in a large crowd. Because in a large crowd, there's so many people, and unless something very specific catches your eye, then you might look in their direction, possibly. If you're on your own, there's nothing to distract anyone else. The world is as you see it. And maybe that's something the Kuchsake Onna also take a look in as well. Because this sounds like a horror story waiting to happen, if not by an owner, but possibly by a very exceptional case. You might, a very opportunistic person.
Enjoying the nightlife, going to clubs and bars, with some possibly stumbling through the streets, drunk. Some concerned parents would use the tale as a way to deter their children from interacting with strangers. A rumor circulated at the time of a coroner's report, which described a woman with a slit mouth who was struck by a car while chasing after a group of children, though there is no confirmed record of such an occurrence ever taking place. Nevertheless, through word of mouth and appearances in newspapers and TV shows, the entire country of Japan was soon panicking for the safety of their children, who had to make their way back home from school without encountering Kuchsake Onna. Children's fear of the spirit was so severe that several prefectures, including Fukushima and Kanagawa, had police cars patrol the streets, looking out for their safety. Special adult councils were also established in Hokkaido to accompany kids as they returned from school. And in Ibaraki Prefecture, children were warned not to approach anyone wearing a mask. According to a survey published in the summer of 1979, 99% of all Japanese children knew of the slit-mouthed woman. The legend was further spread by its appearance in a TV talk show in Osaka called Youngtown, in which young people talked about the panic surrounding the urban legend. The slit-mouthed woman was also drastically reimagined and featured as a villain in episode 29 of the TV show Battle Fever J. According to some unsubstantiated reports, on June 21st, a 25-year-old woman dressed up as Kuchsake Onna as a joke in Hyogo Prefecture's Himeji City and was arrested for bearing a kitchen knife in public, which was against the knife and sword law in Japan. Other sources say that the woman suffered from some mental instability and was arrested after wandering the streets with a knife in her hands after she had used it to actually slit her mouth open from ear to ear. Folklore professor Michael Dillon Foster wrote that the propagation of the story at that time was a reflection of the loss of trust and community spirit as a rapidly developing Japan rapidly urbanized. As rumors of the woman spread from person to person and from community to community, details surrounding her origins and manner of attack began to take shape. Depending on the region, she was a mischievous wife who suffered at the hands of her jealous husband, or she was a victim of plastic surgery gone wrong. This resulted in her need for finding people to call her pretty one more time. If the person did not call her pretty, they would die. If they called her pretty, then she would take off her mask to reveal her slit mouth and ask them if they still thought she looked pretty. If they answered no, she would kill them, specifically cutting them in half. If they said yes, she would take her knife or her scissors and give the person a slit mouth as well. Seemingly, there was nothing anyone could do to get out of that situation unscathed. Not even running away could do much good, as it was said that she could run up to 100 meters in seconds. Quickly, a rumor spread that she had a fondness for beko ame, a type of hard candy, and would be distracted by them if the person she cornered offered some or threw them at her. Others said that she detested pomade, a type of hair wax, and would run away if one simply said the word pomade.
I wonder if that was actually, I don't know about the one about pomade. Maybe that was just used as like a like an advertising strategy to say you want your kids to be safe. Well, shout pomade at them, and even by smelling like pomade, you'll be safe. I think that was a little bit more of a clever little insider sort of thing, as opposed to something that might actually be true. For all I know, maybe it would have been, possibly. I really wouldn't know.
3 times. Another popular theory was that when asked if she looked pretty, an answer like, "You look average," or "just okay," would confuse her, giving intended victims a chance to run away. Finally, if one were to tell her that they could not indulge her question as they had important engagements to attend, she would apologize and walk away. By around August of that year, the legend had left the collective consciousness of the people, strongly coinciding with the school holidays, which prevented the story from being talked about and spread further, though it did leave a lasting impression on the people and would occasionally be featured in print and televised media over the preceding decades. The slit-mouthed woman received its greatest resurgence in the early 2000s with the rise of the internet, where stories could be told easily to many people via anonymous discussion boards like 2channel and text-based blog posts. The story was spread around once again, like the rumor of 20 years before, in a new, updated age of urban legends. At around 2004, the myth managed to reach South Korea, where she became known as the Red-Masked Woman, donning a red mask signifying blood. And in keeping with a certain folklore tradition common in Asian countries, including China, Taiwan, and Korea, evil spirits, like the Red-Masked Woman, can only travel in straight lines, meaning that she could not turn corners or go upstairs. Kuchsake Onna has since been featured in several movies produced in Japan, and her striking image continues to resonate throughout the country, with her likeness being featured in manga and in many illustrations across the net. From 2012 to 2019, in Gifu City, in the prefecture where the legend was born, an empty store was converted into a limited-time haunted house event which featured Kuchsake Onna. Participants would enter the store, which was converted into a dark mansion setting, and would be chased around by actresses portraying the slit-mouthed woman. The legend's popularity may be based in the fact that she is a yokai that feels very tangible, a product of a familiar, urban world. She is a woman with a mask that was already commonplace in Japan and Asia, and now in the rest of the world. She is someone that you could easily pass by on the street, and like many people, under the surface, she is not at all what you may think.
shit my boots that I was getting quite scared myself, because that's something very, very interesting. Listen, guys. Okay, first off, that was The Legend of the Slitmouth Woman, the Kuchsake Onna by Geno Samuel. For those who don't know, and why specifically I wanted to check out this channel in the first place, is because, for those who don't know, I studied the macabre, the gothic, during my last year of secondary school when I was 17 going on to 18. It was the best time I've ever had during my English literature classes. I can tell you categorically that about at least 6 different kinds of stories I could probably write on the spot about a Kuchsake Onna. I am very, very interested as to knowing her origin, and knowing that one of the greatest things I think about if you wanted to create a legend, if you wanted to create a monster in the modern world, is that I think the modern world should reflect its morality, its opinions, its world should reflect on the world we live in right now. Like, for example, could you not perhaps, I mean, considering we live in the digital age where we're surrounded by phones, would it not be possible to say that, make a legend where a person is purely tasked with making phone calls to each person, and if you receive a phone call, you will die? Could there not possibly be some kind of like legend you could create where like a phone call stalker, because you receive something that you have to utilize almost every single day, and the fear comes from not knowing who is calling you, where the call is coming from. Maybe it shouldn't even be a phone call at all. Maybe it's just a text message. That's a little bit more intimidating because it's a little bit more of a modern sort of thing, and it could be anonymous, meaning that it could be anyone around you. It can incite fear, paranoia. That sort of thing could spread, and it could happen to anybody as well. It could happen to anyone, and it could be anyone else behind on the other end of the phone. Similarly, with possibly you could like the same concept of a Kuchsake Onna, you could in many ways have, I don't know, maybe a model perhaps on one of those like America's Next Top Model type shows, who goes out and she's looking and all the cameras are around her, and then possibly millions of people, possibly maybe on the internet or around the world, looking at her, and then she'll say, "Do I look pretty?" And then there could be some idiots around the world saying no, or something like that. And then there's this horrifying shot where the owner is looking straight at the camera, and then she's after you. That, I think, that's just one idea I had. But I gotta say right now, that's what's fascinating me. That's what fascinates me about stuff like this, is because you can create them almost in some of the darkest places, but sometimes even in the most happiest of places, like like a killer clown in Stephen King's It, or or even in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, where Dr. Frankenstein sets out to create man, a mortal creating a man, and he reflects the vilest abominations and in made flesh. And then, and I'm pretty sure there's plenty of other examples as well. Stuff like in Angela Carter's The Magic Toy Shop. Angela Carter, almost her entire work is full of similar sort of stuff as well. Even turning a twist on the Beauty and the Beast fairy tales. But this is not a fairy tale. This is a legend that cannot be almost misinterpreted in any other way. It's about Jesus. I'm not gonna be able to sleep tonight, and it's not even 1 o'clock yet. So anyway, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for checking out this video, and for watching. For me watching Geno Samuel again, and I hope to continue to do this trend, and I'll see all of you guys again in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye for now.